Good morning, everybody, and welcome to another episode. My name is Rebecca. I'm joined by Toby. Welcome to RowingChat. It's great to have you here.
Hey, thanks Rebecca for having me. I think about the company I'm joining by being a part of this, and I'm very excited and honoured to be involved, so thank you very much.
Tell the listeners a little bit about yourself and your career, because you're a lightweight rower, aren't you? And you're still active.
Correct, yes, I'm a current member of the New Zealand elite team, one of the few boats that didn't qualify for the Olympics this year, so I'm currently in New Zealand, basically starting my training for 2020. So next 4 years ahead of me, and I'm sure some very good experiences and a lot of hard work ahead, which I'm looking forward to. I mean, for me, the rowing career started back in '06, and I've been rowing as part of the national team in the various age groups, working my way up for the last 10 years. This year was my first year as a member of the elite team. So very honoured and very excited about the opportunity to be a part of the New Zealand Olympic elite team. Unfortunately, we didn't quite qualify, which was disappointing, but incredible opportunity, and I look forward to what lies ahead.
So tell us a little bit about your rowing career to date, because I first met you when you were a university student a few years back. Where did you start rowing?
Where did I start rowing? I started rowing for a small club in New Zealand called Bay Coast Rowing Club. From there, I quickly transitioned to a different club, Tauranga Rowing Club, which is in the same city, but just on the other side of the city. And the reasoning for that was the college I went to, that was the college that they were sanctioned to the club that I then changed to and rowed for. And I rowed for them for my school career before relocating to Cambridge, which is the centralised city for the New Zealand rowing program. Now, I would argue that one of our main contributors to our success on the world stage is that we do have a centralised program. So if you row for a New Zealand team, if you get selected, you then have to relocate to Cambridge, and you have to live there full time and train there full time. Now that's a big ask for a lot of people, but at the same time, that's what turns out the results, because I get to spend, as with the rest of the team, I get to spend my days training alongside current world and Olympic champions with the very successful team that we have here today, and I think that's just priceless. You know, that's incredible opportunity, and it's a case of you either step up and join those athletes that are performing it to an exceptional level, or you get left behind. So yeah, I relocated to Cambridge and then changed to the local club here, Waikato Rowing Club, which I'm very proud to be a part of, and I'm very fortunate to be on the committee for that, and so heavily involved with trying to grow and progress that club. And I see myself hopefully being a part of it for a very long time to come. And then on the other side of things is working hard to remain as one of the faster lightweights in the country, if I can keep up with and stay ahead of the young bucks coming through, to work towards future international competitions.
Cambridge.
Sorry, can you repeat that, Rebecca? You just cut out a bit there. I'll cut the video. Oh, no, not mine.
In the New Zealand rowing system, is there an annual?
Yes, yeah. So how the system works in New Zealand is we have two different seasons, one being the domestic season and then one being the international season. Now, the international season is how we all know it, which starts around about for us, basically the national teams. So the international season for us starts in March, and that carries right through to the World Championships that end in August. Now, the domestic season is the flip side to that. So as soon as the international season ends, we have a period of about three weeks where we're allowed to break away from the centralised system and go away to different areas where, go and visit, spend some time with family, go on a holiday. So we expected to continue to train, but we can do that off-site. And then we convene back in September, October to begin the domestic training for the domestic season. So that goes through, and we have a number of domestic regattas throughout the summer period for us. So during that domestic season, it's actually summer for us here in New Zealand. So we train during that period, race, and then basically it's all towards the national trials, which are held in March, where we basically fight for our seats to be reselected or selected into the national teams in March, that will then go away or train over our winter period. So from April or March onwards, and then go away to their respective international competitions.
So when you are training Karapiro, how does it work for you? Obviously, this year you got elected in a lightweight double scull. In the past, do you have training groups? How does it work? An assigned coach?
We do, correct. So when the domestic teams are chosen, so following the international season, there is 3 tiers, if you like, that you can view the New Zealand rowing system. There's the base level, which is club athletes. So they range from novices through to masters, and anybody can compete at a club level. The next level or next tier up is called an RPC. So we have 4 teams called regional performance centres. So the New Zealand is split up into 4 different regions, and depending on where your club fits within those regions is the team that you compete for. Now you have to trial for the RPCs, and you then, if you're selected, you train full time, just like the New Zealand athletes, full-time New Zealand athletes do. And basically the purpose or the reason behind these RPCs, or why they were created, was to find and develop pre-elite talent. So they'll now be looking towards Tokyo, with Rio pretty much sealed. Even last year they would have been looking towards Tokyo. So these are young athletes that in 2-3 years time from them joining the team will be looking to break into the various elite teams. But in that period they'll also be aiming for the likes of under 23 and under 21 crews. So that's the second tier, and then the third tier is the New Zealand Summer Squad. So the New Zealand Summer Squad is pretty much the elite team as it is, and then maybe the inclusion of a few others that may be on the cusp of breaking into the team. As part of that wider team, it is then split up into different factions, if you will. So you've got male, female, but then you go beyond that further to go to heavyweight, lightweight, or sculling and sweeping. It tends to be, so you've got a male sweep group, a male sculling group, female, and so on. And within each of those groups, you have a head coach, which will be, so there's a head coach for the sweep program, a head coach for the sculling program, and then you've got coaches under them as well that work with the various groups. To make sure that there's not, obviously you look at the size of our program now, we've got a huge number of athletes just within that elite team or the summer squad itself, for one coach to cater for that one faction. So there's a couple coaches that work with them to cover those various groups. So for myself, for example, are you still there, Rebecca? Can you hear me, Rebecca?
So as a result of that, Toby, who has been your coach over
Apologies for that. So in the season just past, in the summer period just past, I wasn't a part of the summer squad due to performances last year that weren't exceptional by any means, not by Row New Zealand standards, by my standards. I was quite disappointed with actually with how I'd performed. And so I wasn't included in the summer squad. So I worked as a part of the RPC, so that second tier group. Worked very closely. Obviously, my aspirations being quite high, I worked very closely with a number of very talented and very supportive support staff. So my coach at the time was Gary Roberts, the coach of the men's four, the men's Olympic lightweight four for this year, men's heavyweight four, sorry, that just missed out on qualification. As well as that, we have a manager, a very talented manager, and then we also have, we're very fortunate to have access to very successful and talented support staff. So the likes of a physiotherapist, the likes of doctor, the likes of psychologists, so those various groups as well. And I try to make use of all of those services as much as I can, because they are so talented within what we do, and we're so fortunate to have access to them. And without each and every one of their help, we wouldn't be producing the performances that we have today. So it's much wider than just a single coach and a group of rowers. I think we hold ourselves to a very high standard here in New Zealand, and it's not just Row New Zealand. Row New Zealand is one national sports organisation within our wider High Performance Sport New Zealand organisation, which basically covers all sports in New Zealand, and they're the ones that facilitate and create these other support teams and staff that help us along the way. So thanks to they're basically them driving the standard within New Zealand to be one of the most successful sporting nations across all sports. We have access and incredible help to basically help us achieve our dreams within the various sports here. Yeah.
Now, I've heard that with Row New Zealand, you have every 2 weeks a 2K regatta where you all race each other. Tell us a bit more about that.
I don't know where you've heard this one from, Rebecca. This is news to me. We do have, like I said, we have a number of races or regattas during the domestic rowing season. We have about 4 or 5 that we compete at as club or New Zealand athletes. And then during the winter season, there are a few other winter regattas that we put on, because it's our winter season during during the international season here in New Zealand, and those are made to replicate a World Champs or a World Cup as best we can, so we can practice carrying out basically going through the processes that we would at an international regatta. So basically just to accustom ourselves to it as much as we can, so that when we go over there, it's not a huge shock. And it's also a great way. I mean, like I said, I mean, we have such incredible athletes here that with the world record for the men's lightweight double being very similar to the men's pair, I got the incredible opportunity to line up against the men's pair when we did these winter races and basically chase them down the course. And I can't tell you how much I enjoyed that. And again, it's an incredible opportunity. I got to race against Olympic champions every time we did these regattas. So I mean, where else in the world can you do that, you know? So that was incredible for us and really helped us develop as athletes. Now the racing that you may be referring to is that within each week we do time trials. So we have about twice a week we do various time trials, and they can vary in distances. They can be anywhere from maybe 500 meter pieces to maybe an 8K race. And then the ratings within that, so the intensity, it could change. It could be like a 20 rate piece, or it could be an open rate piece. And they line us up again according to world record times. So everything for us is done relative to the world record time. And then we, at the end of the various races, we produce prognostics. So basically that is our time relative to the world record time. They use an equation to pump out a percentage. So depending on how fast we go, basically the closer to the world record time, the higher the percentage. And that's a way of just comparing us across the different event classes. So that is a way of us comparing ourselves against the men's pair. So we basically spend the winter trying to match or even get close to the percentage that they're producing in their time trials. So it's very competitive. And again, it drives the standard, you know, like every day, every time we have one of these races, we know where you sit within the elite team. It's very transparent. Those results are published to the whole team, and it becomes the goal within the team and for each crew to top the prognostic chart. And it's, you know, it's pretty tough. It's pretty, like I said, it's transparent. It's how you receive those results is up to you, and you can either receive it in a positive way and go, hey, look, I'm not there yet, but hey, next week I'm going to try and be a little bit closer and a little bit closer again. Or you can look at it as, man, I'm way off. I continue to have terrible days. Have I got it in me? So yeah.
So if anyone's interested in prognostic times, there actually is an ebook in the Row Perfect shop that explains them and how to use them and how to set them up for your own crews.
Brilliant.
You mentioned now, Toby, that you're actually back in pre-season training. So what sort of training are you doing at the moment?
Yeah, pre-season. It's a weird thing to say, honestly. In winter, Rebecca, on the stand in any other year, like I said, the international season doesn't finish until your respective world championships, which is normally around August. So, I mean, Olympic year is an unprecedented year, so isn't it? So I'm back here working pre-season. Pre-season for us, it tends to just be a lot of miles. So training. Well, at the moment for me, I'm training 1 to 2 times a day. It's a light load, but it's big Ks. So I'm doing big Ks in the boat, sort of anywhere from 18 to 30 Ks in the boat, and then spending a lot of time on the bike. It's something I really enjoy, and it's one of the awesome opportunities that we can have at the moment with the rest of the team overseas, and me being in pre-season, I get to choose the training I do a bit to an extent, as long as I'm making sure I'm doing it. So a lot of Ks on the bike, a few hours on the bike here and there, and then basic strength training. So I know the likes of O'Donovan, who you spoke to, the Irish national rower, in one of their previous podcasts. He's a big fan of strength training, and I found myself agreeing with a lot of the things that he said. We work on rowing, not rowing specific, but very key core strength patterns and movements. So your squats, your deadlifts, etc. And also, as well as that, just working on mobility. So making sure that we're reducing any susceptibility to injury by making sure that we have good mobility. So lots of stretching, lots of core work, and just working holistically to make sure that my body is in the best position it can be, so that when the rest of the Olympic team return home and we start training over the summer, it's prepared to have a real good crack at the I'm sure huge workload that is going to be thrown in at us come this summer season.
So are you training on your own, or is your doubles partner with you?
Correct, yes. So I work alongside my doubles partner. We do a bit of work in the singles at the moment, just basically working on individual stuff, and then we also come together in the double. But as well as that, we're really enjoying the rare opportunity to work with our current New Zealand under-23 and junior crews, which they're in their centralised program here at the moment. They're training hard over the winter, looking towards their respective world championships, and we actually have the opportunity of training alongside a number of those crews, and even if there's an injury, join in with them, which is quite interesting and an awesome opportunity too. I find one of the best ways to improve personally, and it took me a while to realize this, is to actually be really open to who you work with and the different ideas that you accept and try to take on. I mean, you may be at a different standard or of a higher standard than the rower that you may be working with, but that doesn't mean that they don't have things that you can learn from, as well as you teaching them. So as a part of our trial process, we're thrown in with athletes that we may not have rowed for with months or even at all. and then we're expected to race over unknown distances at unknown intensities. So you have to be really adaptable and be able to make a boat go fast on a whim. So I think it's really good for us as well to be able to be really adaptable and learn to row with other people. So I turn it into a bit of a game, to be honest. I go, all right, this is who I'm working with. Hey, mate, how fast can we make this boat go within this one session, you know? And it can be really beneficial for both people, you know? It's very much how you approach it. But if you approach it in the right way, you can definitely gain things yourself. Yeah.
Give me an example of something you learned from a recent outing like that.
What did I learn? Well, I mean, I rode actually with a female. I jumped in a double. Was last season I was selected the men's university lightweight single. There was 3 other singles, men and female heavyweight lightweight within our small team, the university team. And every once or twice a week we would break away from our singles and join up and go out in doubles. And it didn't just have to be by gender, you know, it could be mixed boats. And I found that there was a lot of things that could be learnt from these females that I was rowing with. Okay, yes, the boat may have been going a little bit slower. And hey, on a good day, it could have been going faster than maybe a double, all male double that I'd be a part of. But rowing with her, I noticed small things like the way that they approached the recovery. It was just very relaxed, very calm, and not rushed in any way. And I think there was a lot to be taken from that, for example.
Fantastic. Now we've got a question here from Scott O'Reilly from Murwillumbah Rowing Club in Australia, who says, you have a personal coach once crews are selected, but what happens before the crews are selected? Who coaches you?
Hi, Scott, and thanks for the question, mate. Again, it goes back to, so coaches are selected per season just as we are. So we have our domestic season, as I spoke to, the 3 different tiers or different teams that you can be a part of. And as we are selected as athletes, coaches are selected just like we are. So they have a program or a progression through the New Zealand rowing system, just like we do, and they work their way up through the various age groups up to the elite team, etc. And so each time that we're selected for a different season within New Zealand, a coach is also selected, and we work with that coach. So you can in 1 year have, or it's not uncommon, it's the standard to have two different coaches in 1 year. The RPC coaches tend to stay the same. There's a head coach who looks after a number of athletes within those regional performance centres, and then within the New Zealand teams, the coaches tend to specify towards a certain group, whether it's male lightweight sculling, or it tends to be by sculling or sweep, and then by gender, and there tends to be a bit of consistency around which group that a coach coaches. So you can tend to work with the similar coach in international, your national representative teams, but again, that can change for them as well. So
now we're going to move on to a new topic, and it's a little bit of a thorny one here. Duncan Conybeer from Reading Rowing Club in the UK asks, do you see a future for lightweight rowing at the highest level, i.e. the Olympics?
I like this question. I was kind of expecting it, to be honest, Rebecca. So I did a lot of thinking about this, because I need to be very careful about what I say, because I have a lot of friends that are a part of our heavyweight team, and I might get a bit of flack if I say the wrong thing. I do see a future in lightweight rowing. Well, I would hope to see a future in lightweight rowing. I mean, a part of the whole reform that, if you're not aware, FISA, the governing body for rowing in the world, are currently considering a reform, and the purpose of that is there's 3 purposes to it. One, to retain a strong position within the Olympic movement, the second being to ensure integrity of rowing, and third, to consolidate rowing's position as a global citizen. Now, the purposes of that really, I guess, is to make sure that we stay relevant within the Olympic program, because if we don't as a sport, we will be under threat. And you could argue that we are currently under threat to being removed from the current Olympic program, because if you look at other sports, we may not pull the same spectators, a number of spectators, and not quite as interesting as other sports, arguably. Now, I get that hurts me to say that, because I have a huge love for the sport, but it's the reality we're in today. It's and if we do, and as well as that, you look at the requirements to hold a rowing event, the 2K course, the very specific requirements to make that happen. It's a big task to create and put on or facilitate that kind of venue. So we need to remain relevant within the Olympic program if we want to stay as a part of it. Now, as part of that reform, there's two sort of reviews going on, one of the rules and the other of the events. Now, the themes within that are very similar. Like, for example, the rules review, the themes within that are gender equality, universality, inclusion, sustainability, health of the athletes, and events, principles, and programs. Now, the event principles themes are very similar to that, a little bit more specific. So it's very clear that, or FISA made it very clear that by 2020 they want to have a change of the review, the rules towards more gender equality. So it's very, very likely that we will be looking at a 50-50 split, where it's a little bit out at the moment. And as a result, that means that, hey, one male event or male events are going to have to be removed and female events added. Because the number of athletes that the sport of rowing is allocated within the Olympic program is set at 550, and that's not going to change unless we become more relevant within the Olympic program. So, some spots for males are going to be have to be removed to make way for Olympic female spots. Now, all three proposed program changes that FISA made had the removal of the lightweight 4 in favour of another female event, and now that hurts me to see that happen. And I argue that although that might achieve the number one theme of the rule review of gender equality, it also could go against the number 3 rule of inclusion, because in my mind, the lightweight program was created to allow for other athletes that may not be 6-foot hugeness like Mahe Drysdale and 100+ kgs, you know. And then you've also got the coxswains, so the small guys. There was that medium that wasn't really catered for, and in my mind, it was created to cater for that middle group. So by removing a lightweight 4 event from the Olympic program and reducing the lightweight spots for males to 2 like the females, you're going against that idea of inclusion. Now, the reason in my mind that the lightweight 4 is under threat is because you look at a World Championships or an Olympic, any international event, and the lightweight men 4 times tend to be very similar to that of the men's heavyweight 4 times. So you could look at that and go, well, hold on, why are we hosting this if we're just having the same results in these 2 events? Now, the way I look at that, and I think John Smith posted a tweet about it a little while ago, saying that the reasoning for that is that where there's only one lightweight sweep event at the Olympics for male lightweights, is you will find that the lightweight sweepers within that nation will be in that boat. You'll have your fastest lightweights in that one boat because it's the only boat at the Olympics. Whereas you look at the heavyweight program, the heavyweight events at the Olympics, and there's a number of them, and you could argue that the reason that the lightweight 4 is going so well is that we're not spread out, you know, where the heavyweights could be spread out across the various heavyweight classes, the lightweights aren't. And so that is why the standard of lightweight rowing is so high. And you can see that again in the racing as well. Like, it's not uncommon for Martin Cross to say at the 1,000-meter mark, it looks like we've just started the race here, you know. I mean, it's obvious within our program, the men's pair, Eric and Hamish, it's very clear that they're our fastest sweeper. And so our pair is our fastest men's sweep boat. And if you look at the German program, you could argue that it's their 8, or GB's the exception. They're targeting the 4 this year. But it's not every nation doing that, and so you could argue that the standard isn't being driven quite as high. Not to say that they're not going fast. I would very much struggle to keep up with them, and hey, they're exceptional athletes. So I'm not saying that they're not in any way or shape or form. But I think by removing the lightweight 4, you're going against that idea or that theme of inclusion. Now there is still the lightweight double, but it would be very disappointing to see less spots for lightweights at the Olympics. Now, how you achieve that? I mean, there's lots of different ideas being thrown around. Like, for example, Julian Bahrain, believe that's his name. I'm sorry if I've got it wrong. From the Canadian program, came up with a blog where he suggested that we actually look at it more basically a bit more out of the box thinking, a bit more intuition to it, because although we might be able to remove one event and add another, that could be perceived to be just a bit of a band-aid, and only a short-term fix when come down the track in the next Olympic cycle, or the one after that, or one after that, we're then still looking at having to remain relevant because this one change hasn't been the be-all end-all fix. So whether we need to be a little bit more out of the box and get really extreme on our thinking as to, okay, do we actually change the setup of the event? Do we change, okay, it's not 2K racing, or it's not standard flat water racing, it becomes river racing? There's a lot of ideas being thrown around, and I think a lot of traditionalists will struggle with that. But again, if we want to remain relevant, we have to be prepared to really get out there and think of some new ideas. So if I encourage anybody out there in the rowing community that has any ideas that they think could be the fix or the potential solution for this to approach FISA and don't be afraid to share their ideas.
That's great advice. So thanks for that. We're going to take a short break now with a message from our sponsor. When you're in a top rowing squad, there's a large number of support services that are giving extra consultation, advice and guidance to athletes. This is not available to the rest of us. But Ben Rodford has written the book that explains how to be your own support team, covering detailed advice on nutrition, flexibility, physiotherapy and sports psychology. Ben's expert guide gives us all the skills to improve our rowing body and mind. For example, under the physiotherapy chapter, Ben explains what is soft tissue therapy and how rowers can benefit from it. Further, he advocates a DIY method. His detailed text explains how to cover each part of your body, from feet, calves, hamstrings, quadriceps, right up through the back and arms. Get yourself a copy of Ben Rodford's book, Be Your Own Support Team, from the Row Perfect store, and improve your physical and mental shape for rowing. Now, back to Toby Cunliffe-Steel. Toby, we've got another question from a listener called Damien Derleek, who rows at Port Adelaide Rowing Club. Damien asks, would you consider Rio to be the last Olympic Games for lightweights? We seem to have lost Toby off the call, so I'm just going to hope that he will come back quickly into the call. Now, my personal point of view about the rowing lightweights at the Olympic Games is that I think it's interesting that FISA has never chosen to target the men's heavyweight for exclusion and substituting the men's lightweight for inclusion in their proposals. And I question whether or not that's a balanced point of view, whether there are too many heavyweights who are on the FISA Council who are pushing that decision as they come back to reviewing the future Olympic Games programme for our sport. Julian Bahrain wasn't the only blogger to write about his views on the Olympic programme. There's also, if you're inclined to search, some detailed discussion on the Martin Cross. He put up a video of himself, as always, he calls it My Take. So if you look for the blogging oarsman, that's Martin Cross's blog. And also we had an article that was heavily discussed on the Row Perfect website with views being canvassed from around the world. I can see that Toby's trying very hard to rejoin us, but at the moment, here we go. Toby, welcome back. Well done.
Apologies. Internet works right up until the moment that you need it most, and then it cuts out on you. Classic.
Yeah.
Apologies to everybody.
Now, you're an athlete who's had to fight for your achievements. How do you do this?
For me, I mean, every rower or every athlete tends to go through some form of adversity of their own, and I would argue, I think it's fair to say that I've been through my fair share. And for me, I guess it just making sure that the ultimate goal stays in mind. And a very good example of that is the potential reform that we're going through at the moment. So, I mean, my ultimate goal is to be one of the fastest lightweights in the world. You know, I want to be kicking it up there, and I've got a lot of people that I'm going to have to work against to get there, and I very much look forward to working again with the current lightweights that we have in the world today, and getting to know them and putting out some good battles out on the water. But for me, the ultimate goal just needs to stay the same and needs to be very clear. And for me, like I said, fastest lightweight in the world. But to achieve that, that might look very different to how I think it does now or did maybe a year ago with this reform. You know, the lightweight 4 could be removed, and that could be another event gone for lightweight. So it's not getting too caught up in the things that are that the adversity that you are challenged with or come up against. And when you do go through that, just reminding yourself, okay, why am I doing this? Who is it for? And what can I do now to achieve that, as opposed to dwelling on the adversity that you're going through. Okay, I'm injured, or this is going to put me back this much. It's going to take me a while to get back to where I was, and get, instead of getting caught up in that and letting that become the focus, refocus onto what can be beneficial to the challenges that you're facing in that moment of time towards achieving your goals. So when I come up to adversity, sometimes, you know, I'm not gonna lie, there's one point where my car broke down. I was struggling financially. I think I'd made a couple mistakes at work. I work outside of rowing, and I think there was one morning where I was biking down to training and I got 2 flat tires on my road bike, and I just had to stop for a moment, and instead of getting all caught up in it, I just laughed. I just laughed at myself, and it would have been very funny if you were going past, just seeing this lightweight rower standing in the middle of the cycle path just laughing to himself. But I find that if you get caught up in the negative things, that, let's be honest, you're going to go through adversity. Everybody does. It's just part and parcel to the journey. Getting caught up in those things is not going to be beneficial towards achieving your dreams. So,
now, you kindly told me when we were discussing you coming on the show in your personal biography that you're a cancer survivor. Is there anything you learned from that experience that helps your rowing?
Oh, 100%, 100%. I would argue that without the experience that I went through, I wouldn't be here today. And not to say that I want another one, or that I would wish it on anybody else, of course, but that's, that was part of the experience. For me, it's a bit of a morbid message, but it's that life can end in a matter of moments to no fault of your own. You could be doing everything right by the way that you see it, by your morals, and still go through adversity. And it's like I said, life in itself. Your place on this earth could end within a matter of moments without cause. And if you live your life in fear of things, I mean, are you really living it to its full extent? The message I learned from that is, hey, if my life is going to end tomorrow, well, I'm going to make the most of today, because that is a reality. And for me, like that cancer journey really opened my eyes towards that. I was going, the way I approached the things that I undertook, my schooling at the time, and my start to my rowing career, it was very much okay, let's just give this a crack, have some fun. And occasionally when things got hard, I said, oh, hey, you know what, I'll just throw in the towel and I'll go and do something else. Whereas now it's, hey, tomorrow I might not get to do this, so I'm going to make the most of it now while I can. I'm going to give this 100%. And that was the message that definitely came out of that. And I do my very best to share with everybody I can, because I hope I would never wish such an experience on anybody else. And if I can teach you the lessons that I learned from it without you having to go through it yourself, then hey, that's a win for me, even if it's one person,
Fabulous. Thank you very much for sharing that. How do you test your personal performance, and how often do you do it? So this is my question.
Yeah. Testing personal performance. Well, Rowing New Zealand has a number of tests that they put us through on weekly, monthly, even a daily basis, and they can be very enjoyable and very not enjoyable. But that's all part of it. I guess the tests that they put us through are a number of erg tests. I think it's known that we do 2K erg tests, but as well, instead of the more international standard of 6K, we tend to do 5Ks. And then we do a bit of test, like I said, the time trials that we do twice a week on the water as well, that produce the prognostics. They're all various forms of testing that we undergo on a daily basis, you could say. Not so much on the erg side of things. We don't do regular erg testing. That's more maybe 2-3 times in a season, if that. But the testing that we do on the water is pretty regular. And then we also do a bit of testing in the weights room as well. So through those various tests, because we do so many of them on a regular basis, we are given a bit of an indication as to where we're at within our own rowing career and our own performance. And as a result, we can compare it. Okay, how are we doing week on week? How am I doing month on month? And get a real indication of how you're going. And that's really beneficial and informative towards achieving a performance. And so for me, within my performance, and it's not necessarily just about those times, but something that I've been really working on a lot and learned from the likes of Mahe Drysdale and a psychologist that I'm working with very closely at the moment from High Performance Sport New Zealand, Rob Corbin, is around how I approach it mentally. So how I handle the situation. Okay, a time is one thing, and it's still very important, don't get me wrong, but how do I approach that situation, and then how do I handle it while I'm under pressure and carrying it out? And for me, I think that's in a place where I'm at, where fitness and is going to improve, and strength is going to improve because of the very successful and intelligent support services that I work with. But the mentality side of things, that is 100% up to me. I do have guidance from my psychologist, but how I implement that is up to me. So I work a lot on, all right, how did I actually go about it, and how did I handle that moment? Yeah.
That's fantastic advice. Thank you. And of course, practicing it makes you better at it, like most things.
100%.
Now, my last question for you is about dieting. As a lightweight, obviously you are in a weight limited category. So when you are actively dieting, what techniques do you use?
I mean, let's be honest, there's a lot of dieting methods and initiatives out there, whether it's paleo or gluten-free, or, there's a lot of different approaches.
I think you mean paleo, not polio.
Paleo. Oh, sorry. I do too. My man. Thanks for catching me on that one, Rebecca. No, so for me, I try to keep it real basic. Again, one of the incredible support services that we have access to is a nutritionist. And I work with him on keeping things really basic. So making sure that I am getting the essential nutrients that I need, whether it's going back to macronutrients, so you've got your carbohydrates, your proteins, and your lipids, being your fats. And when it comes to dieting, I sort of just look to cut back more portion sizes, not in key areas. Obviously, I'll start cutting out the little treats that I occasionally am guilty of giving myself, whether it's a bit of baking here or a bit of flavored milk there. Cutting out on things like that, but then also just reducing the portion sizes as I go. And then if need be, when it comes to competition, then maybe you need to do a bit of sweating. Obviously, just monitoring the weight closely to make sure that I'm on target. And if I'm not, then doing a bit of sweating exercises. But I try to avoid that. I'm not a big fan of the whole idea of sweating out. So I'll try and just be a bit more stricter on my diet in the lead up to events. And it's when I say lead up to, it's not just a few day fix and just cutting out all food. And it's because if you do it that way, when you come to race, you're just going to have no energy and you're going to massively underperform. So it needs to be more than that. It needs to be really carefully thought out. And so for me, it starts 6-7 weeks out. I start really thinking, all right, I'm going to need to start cutting back my portions now and just really monitor my weight as I go. So in that last week, I'm not trying to drop huge amounts of weight and as a result negatively impact my performance. So I think that's very important. If you are a lightweight or a new lightweight to the sport, don't try and approach it as dramatic few day fixes, because that isn't going to help you with your performance. That will negatively impact your performance. So try and be a bit smarter about it and think about it as a long game. Yes, it's hard. You're going to be hungry. You're going to have cravings. But it's just about how you handle that. I know one of the lightweights in the New Zealand program at the moment, to handle his sweet cravings that he has a lollipop, because it's not a huge amount of sugar within a lollipop, but it's something that he can suck on for a very long time and just help take away those cravings. So find things that work for you. I think nutrition is something that is very personalized. I've had access to a number of nutritionists as being a part of this program, and they all seem to have different approaches. But you've got to, again, it's very individualized. Just because it may work for someone doesn't mean that it'll work for you. So for me, I've approached all the senior lightweights in our program as I was going through and asked them, okay, how do you do it? How do you do it? And thought very carefully about how they did things, and then trialed some things to see if it worked for me. And sometimes it didn't, just because, okay, it may be a really good food. If your body doesn't like it, if it doesn't accept it in the same way, you're not going to have the same results. It's going to, just because it might be a good nutritional food, if your body doesn't like it, then it doesn't like it. So it has to be very personalized too. So don't be afraid to do a bit of trial and error, but also don't be afraid to ask those senior, more experienced athletes in your program to get a few ideas on how they do things. Yeah.
So what's your training weights through the winter?
And that's the thing, Rebecca. I think Bill Manning spoke to this, and when you were speaking with him in a previous podcast, that there is no restriction to lightweight weight in the New Zealand program. Obviously, you're expected to hit weight when it comes to racing, otherwise you're going to be in trouble. But during the winter program, it's very much up to you. So I just honestly, I just let my weight sit where it sits, and I don't really monitor my weight during the middle or the start of the winter season. I just let it sit where it's getting comfortable. And then as we get closer to competition, so starting from a few months out, I'll then start checking my weight more regularly as we go through, and then making the dietary adjustments as per needed to get to race weight. I find that by letting my body sit where it wants to during that early start of the season or the middle part of the season, I'm able to perform better, because my body's not under some nutritional stress. And then when it comes to performance, I'm just really careful about the peak performance. I'm just really careful about how I approach that.
So when do you weigh yourself? Is it first thing in the morning?
Oh, it tends to be both. Well, if I'm in like a few weeks out from an event, I'll be weighing myself both morning and afternoon. One, to be getting an idea of how much weight I'm gaining during the day, but also how much weight I'm losing at night, because there can be a bit of an average. Now, as you start to go down in weight, obviously you'll be losing less and less at night because you'll be taking on less and less. But I tend to do it at both times. Yeah.
So you get a personal sort of measure of the reality of the flow of your body.
Yeah, get an idea of the fluctuation, your personal fluctuation. Now, for me, for example, I lose only a very little amount overnight. I can lose as little as 600 grams, whereas my doubles partner, he would lose one and
So I fear that we've lost Toby again on the internet, which is unfortunate. So I'm guessing that he was going to say that his doubles partner loses 1.5 or possibly even more than that kilos on the overnight sleeping. It's been a delight having Toby here as our guest on Rowing Chat. It's great to get the insight into how an active rower in a top national programme rows, but also for me, the lightweight angle is fascinating, how they have to train and control themselves, and the unique psychology of the lightweight rower really is beneficial. And obviously, Toby has had to work extremely hard to acquire the skills of being an all-round international athlete. We wish you all the best, Toby, for your future. I'm really sorry that you didn't make it to Rio this year, but you're definitely a name to watch. And hopefully we'll be seeing you on the podium in the years to come. That's all for this month's Rowing Chat. Really looking forward to our next guest, and watch the Row Perfect website blog, because that's where we will announce who the next visitor guest is.